This is the Leadership in Insurance podcast, brought to you by FinPro Search Partners.
Insurance companies are businesses and they need to look for the long term and be sustainable.
We went from 0 to 1 and now it's going from 1 to 100.
Insurance as a concept, as a kind of service, is brilliant. The execution is what we're looking at now.
I think the companies that are going to succeed are the ones that are going to understand and master the art of intent.
When we talk about innovation, we lean too heavily to think about technology and we don't think about creating a culture of innovation.
I think innovation is essentially continuous improvement of existing processes and platforms and product.
Right? It's got to be easy. It's got to be seamless.
Good morning and welcome to the Leadership in Insurance podcast. I'm your host, Alex Bond, and I'm very lucky today to be joined by Joan Woodward, who is EVP of Policy at Travelers and founding president of the Travelers Institute. Joan, did I get that right to start with?
Got it right. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. Well, look, thank you for joining me. And it's always customary on the podcast to allow the guests to introduce yourself. So it'd be wonderful if you could introduce yourself and obviously the role that you play at the Travelers Institute.
Sure. So I landed at Travelers about 16 years ago, and our CEO and vice chairman, who is now CEO, Alan Schnitzer, had the brilliant idea of starting a think tank, and it's called the Travelers Institute. We're more of a do tank than a think tank. We'll get into that later. And so I was asked to come over from Goldman Sachs, where I ran the Global Markets Institute for 10 years, and start a think tank at Travelers. So my background is I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked in the government for 12 years, chief economist on the House Budget Committee and Finance Committee, and played a role in creating the Roth IRA, which in the U.S. is an instrument for saving for retirement. I worked for the other senator from Delaware, Bill Roth. He was senator for 30 years with Biden on the other side. So I've had a wonderful career. I feel very lucky. I didn't know much about the insurance industry 20 years ago, but I sure do now.
Yeah, I bet you do. Yeah, it's a really impressive career, and I want to touch on some of those kind of broad aspects earlier. But I think particularly, look, we've got an audience that spreads the globe, but I think particularly from a UK lens, someone like myself, why does an insurance company need a public policy division, a think tank division? Why is that something that kind of we should be involved with in the insurance industry?
Yeah, so the concept is to help raise awareness about really important public policy topics for regulators and legislators and the general public at large. And so we have several different platforms. So again, I say we're a think tank. We do write white papers. Of course we do, because that's kind of bread and butter. But we like to get out in the communities and engage with our agent and broker partners to raise awareness around topics. I'm going to give you an example of a couple. One in our personal lines business, which is Every Second Matters, which is raising awareness around distracted driving and the dangers and things you could do to prevent that. On our business insurance side, it's raising awareness around cybersecurity threats. And of course, insurance plays a very large role in cybersecurity. It is that backstop for businesses to recover and be resilient in the case of a breach or a data hack, which is happening more and more and more around the world. And so we're raising awareness to not just the public, but agent and brokers, regulators, legislators about our industry. And look, we have 30,000 experts, and we want to share that knowledge in a nonpartisan way, in an unbiased way, knowledge sharing about our industry, because frankly, people do it once a year and they don't think about it, right? They sign up for a policy, they don't read the policy. And so understanding kind of what's in there and why it benefits society and talking about it in those terms. And look, we're a GDP-driven industry. We want more trucks on the road. We want more people working. And so from the macroeconomic standpoint, we touch everything.
That's always been the thing that I found interesting about insurance from day one. Yeah, it does touch everything. Nothing has made me happier than this week where we had a very new member of the team going, "Oh, it really is everywhere." And they were like quoting this news article, and I was like, "Oh, look, the bug's bitten you. You're going to bore your family to death with this forever." So, yeah, the global kind of involvement of insurance and everything is always kind of front of mind for me. I wanted to sort of touch some of those kind of issues, and you said about awareness. Why is awareness so important? And it might be a naive point, but I'm sort of thinking, are we thinking that if we educate the broader public, then we have a better risk platform, or is it an opportunity to ultimately kind of drive awareness so people are aware to kind of buy more policies, or is it more altruistic than that? And I'm being not being cynical, but, sort of understanding kind of why that awareness is important.
Look, an educated electorate, an educated consumer, an educated, person of the world is always better off. Knowing more versus knowing less. And again, we think at Travelers that the insurance industry provides a great benefits to society, not just personal insurance, but business insurance, some of the specialty insurance products, some of the new products coming out. Look, 20 years ago, we didn't have a cybersecurity insurance policy, right? And so we evolve and we innovate as the world changes. And so I think what's really exciting about our educational and kind of awareness platform is we're providing a benefit to society who is better educated, more informed. You always want that about your consumer, to have the most information at their fingertips so they can make that informed decision about their buying power.
Yeah, actually, strangely enough, we just had a podcast go out and we were talking about there was a company that shared lots more claims data than other companies had, and their whole view was that if we have a more educated consumer, there'll probably be a better risk because they kind of adapt their behaviours. And so, yes, is a sort of there's an overall net benefit, and I completely agree. You've mentioned it at the top actually, and I this is one thing that struck me when I was looking at the website. I really like that distinction of a do tank, not a think tank. And I think we kind of understand what they mean, but how does that change what you do practically on a kind of day-to-day basis?
Well, other than my airline frequent flyer miles, it is getting out into the community and globally. Actually, we have a large presence in Canada and the UK, and talking to people about their lives, about their businesses, understanding risk. We have a couple of platforms right now at the Institute. We've just launched a new one I'm very excited about. It's called Workforce Risk. And so understanding everything that's going on with your employees, right? How they think about their jobs, their engagement level. If you have an engaged workforce, they're going to be more productive. They're going to be happier. Thinking about mental health and other things that can happen to your employees along the way. And that translates into back to the business, always tied to the business, kind of workers' compensation. And so if you think about a worker who takes workers' comp because of a tragic accident and they're sitting at home recovering, as they should be, isolated, right? And just wondering, what's my job going to be like when I get back? And so mental health issues, even PTSD comes into place in a lot of the kind of more traumatic accidents that happen out there in the workforce. And so our workforce risk and understanding what risks are in your employee base, you could better price products, you could better anticipate healthcare costs. And so again, being educated about these issues for employers. So we do events throughout the country. We were in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago. We had 250 agent and broker partners talking about cybersecurity. And we've had partnerships with, for example, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI in the US, understanding the threat landscape for cybersecurity risk for a business. And then again, educating, making people more aware of their risk. Again, we want an educated consumer.
So it seems there's much more, obviously the white papers are part of it, but are the white papers like a starting point of kind of really truly engaging? How does that cycle work? Presumably it's a big feedback loop. It's like we're talking to people, what are they concerned about? What are they aware of? Then, where does the cycle of the kind of things that you focus on come from?
Yeah, so we get, most of our kind of topics and ideas of what's percolating in the business, what's new in the business, and what risks they're seeing that are not fully aware of, risk managers and CFOs. We did a big study, CFO study recently, and we released it at RIMS, the risk management, the big kind of global conference, talking about what keeps CFOs up at night. And so we write a white paper there, then we take it on the road. We've been to 200 cities in the last 15 years. We're celebrating our 15th anniversary at the Travelers Institute. And we've hosted, I'm going to say more than 500 programs. This year alone, I have been to 30 cities, talking to agent and broker partners, hosting events, listening to their concerns, and then bringing back and trying to, kind of, again, talking to policymakers and regulators in Washington and state capitals. Our insurance industry is regulated by the states, in individual states in the United States, understanding the risks that are unique to each of these states, like wildfire risk in California and Colorado. And so we roll out kind of wildfire prevention platforms. We write white papers on that. We take it on the road. We have webinars. I host a Wednesday webinar, Wednesdays with Woodward, if you haven't tuned in. And so just like you, we're trying to get the word out, right? And trying to educate.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I haven't got quite as snappy as the title as Wednesday with Woodward, but I think people should check it out. I wanted to ask you a broader question, really, about the insurance industry, and it's something that we discuss a lot on this podcast. I mean, we kind of touched on it at the outset before we actually hit record. Is that we've got an image problem, I think, in the insurance industry, but particularly an image problem in the public eye. Do the insurance industry needs to do more there? And also, how realistic is it to do more? Because something I always talk about is like, we like to talk about things that are industry wide, but we are all quite often competing business, competing carriers. It is an industry, but it doesn't mean we all have to play nicely together.
Yeah, when you talk about an image problem, I think, certain circumstances, one incident could kind of change the perception of what insurance plays in people's lives. But we're there on your darkest day. We're there when your house is burned down, a hurricane has just come through and leveled your house. We're there when a business gets interrupted by a cybersecurity hack. And just bringing businesses back from a hack is not easy, right? And recovering data and being that trusted advisor for consumers and businesses. So being there on your darkest day and then having an excellent claim service that executes every single day, day in, day out with complete care for the customer. But there will be instances, of course, in any business that don't turn out like the consumer or the businesses had hoped. But then again, are they understanding what insurance product they actually bought, right? Are they understanding their coverages? Did they get the right coverages for them? So I'm going to say this sounds negative, but it's like going to the dentist. You have to go to the dentist, right? Once a year or twice a year. It's good for you. The dentist provides incredible amount of services for your health and well-being, but you don't like to do it. So not a lot of people like to pay that insurance premium once a year, right? It's just, but it's going to be there for you if you need it. And so I don't know if the insurance industry should be put in the same bucket as the dental industry, but that's the way I think about it. It's good for you, but you don't like to write that check every year. But we're going to be there when you need us in your darkest hour. And so again, raising awareness about all the good our companies do in society. Think about workers' compensation claims. You've been injured on an accident that wasn't your fault, and we completely take care of your health care, again, your mental well-being. And so we wrap our arms around businesses and people to provide services when they need us most. And I think that's a good way to think about it.
I agree, but I think sometimes it's always challenging because we know these things, and I think good claim service is a really good example. And it's the irony being that you only really realise that your insurance is worth doing if you have to claim, which is not ideal. And they're using this sort of dentists. Dentists are very good at when you're in the waiting room saying, this is what happens if you don't look after your teeth. And there's always nasty pictures and images. And I think my thoughts on this have always been that clarity from the insurance industry has not been great. So that education piece, which is clearly we must have said educated consumer 20 times already on this podcast, is that seems to be the most kind of accurate way of getting kind of that relationship to be built. Like, what are you covered for? What are you not covered for? Where are the gaps? And I suppose to that point, it really kind of amplifies the role of the agent or the broker.
Yes.
And it's interesting to see a lot of kind of innovation insurance is trying to sort of disintermediate and if anything, I think it kind of highlights how important it is that we keep those kind of brokers and agents. And have you some thoughts around that? Because that's always been a conversation in the innovation of insurtech, trying to kind of disintermediate. And actually, if anything, the conversation we're having is that they've just got an even bigger role to play.
Yeah, look, 10, 20 years ago when direct to consumer was kind of a big thing and coming on the scene, a lot of our agent broker partners were worried that their jobs were going to be, taken away all of a sudden. But the world has gotten more complex and risks have gotten more complex, especially for business owners. And so, having that trusted advisor to rely on for advice, because I will guarantee it, your broker or your agent has seen everything, right? They've seen every possible scenario that has come before all their many clients. And so what might happen to you next week in your business, that agent and broker has had experience with that risk, right? And knows how to handle it, knows what's right and what's wrong in terms of the coverages for you and your unique situation. So I think about it like this, I never bought an insurance rider on my jewelry, right? Until I had jewelry. Never even it dawned on me, right, to buy that. And so think about wedding insurance. Like on your most precious day, if something goes wrong, you have insurance to back you up. Now, it's not the memories are going to be there that your caterer didn't show up or your photographer. But the point is that insurance products, and we've innovated so much recently in the last 10 years of insurance products, and we continue to innovate. in the business. I'm circling around your question, but to say that I think that there's a lot that the agent and the broker is there for you. And whatever small commissions being paid or whatever their value, it's just so invaluable to get that perspective, because you want to run your business. You don't want to have to worry about every single risk that could hit you in your business. You want to be running whatever business it is for profitability. And so having that trusted partner next to you, and that's why we're such a big advocate of independent insurance agent brokers.
Yeah, I mean, I had my first experience this year. I've always bought directly for my business, my search business, and this year is the first year I've used the broker, and the experience was amazing. I mean, because my business is more complex, it's expanded, we operate in different territories now, and realistically, I was getting asked questions on the direct side when I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know what cover I should need, what I shouldn't need. And that broker was that completely crucial role in educating me, and as a guy that knows quite a lot about insurance already.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of expanding upon that, and this is probably quite a broad question, so you might want to sort of silo in on something, but I'm really interested about the role that the insurance sector has to play in sort of in commercial innovation outside of the insurance industry, because without insurance, lots of businesses wouldn't happen. But particularly when we look at innovation, I'm thinking things like self-driving cars here. I'm thinking of the things about kind of carbon capture and all of those sorts of things. But how does it conduct itself? What role do you think it has to play? I'd really be interested in your thoughts on that, particularly because you've got such a unique background.
Yeah, let's take self-driving cars. So insurance products are made to allow for innovation. Let's just say that in the beginning. And when an innovation occurs in a sector or an industry, that new product that was just developed must be insured. Anything of value should have insurance, right? And so our industry is innovating and allowing for innovation in different industries. So insurance products can be written and can be new to allow for innovation in the future, right? And so think about SpaceX and things that have happened, just mind-blowing things you never thought would happen, 5-10 years ago that are happening in the world today. And so we have people thinking, in fact, we have an innovation jam, okay, every year. We have, I think it was over 1,000 people at the company participated in an innovation jam, and we all get together. And of course, we have winners and not losers. Everyone's a winner, but we award those best innovations that allow for innovation in different industries and different sectors. And so we feel a culture of innovation and innovation mindset for our company anyway has propelled us and given us that advantage in the marketplace. And so I think any business who is not innovating every single day to think about what's around the corner, and sometimes it's hard to see around the corners, but that corner is going to happen to your business and you want to be ahead of the curve. And our insurance products have to be ahead of the curve to allow for innovation in many different industries, as you say.
I wanted to take a sort of broader view, and this is probably just leaning on your background. You've had this incredible career working across government, economist, and then like investment banking with Goldman's, and then so now focus on the insurance industry. And talking about innovation, I wondered if you observed any common challenges, because we love to talk about insurance being behind the curve and a lot of these things, but the more I talk to people with these broad careers that span kind of these disparate industries, there tends to be these themes that the industries struggle with. And I didn't know if there's kind of any common challenges that you'd seen that would prevent or get in the way of innovation.
Yes, the one thing I'll say is, working on Capitol Hill for 12 years as a younger person in my 20s and 30s, government entities who have never been in the private sector, they just don't know how industries work. They just don't know because they've never lived that. And so, or maybe they've lived in a small way. Actually, what's interesting about our current Congress, there's a lot of members of Congress who actually had a background in insurance, which we think is a very good thing. But a lot of government entities, for example, when I helped my boss, Senator Bill Roth, writing the Roth IRA, we had to rely on the Wall Street, the investment managers to help inform where those Roth IRA cutoffs for, are you going to allow $5,000 a year to be put away for your savings? So we had to rely on the, mounds of data and analytics that this industry had done to inform how Congress was going to write this law, right? And so working with government and private sector industries to inform what, for example, a law should be, that it's going to affect hundreds of millions of people for decades to come. And so I think, again, partnering with government entities to ensure they understand what each business, and I'd say this for any business you're in. If you're in the oil and gas business, having regulators and policymakers in Washington and around the state capitals understand exactly what your business is trying to achieve. And look, we're the largest employer in, the government is not employing, as many people as the private sector is. There's a lot of evidence out there that people don't trust institutions these days, the institution of government or of higher education or the healthcare system. People are not trusting us to do the right thing for them and their families. And the insurance industry, if you think about it, is always going to do the right thing for the business and for the individual. That's our job. And so I thread through my career of government, Wall Street, and now insurance. And I say the common theme really is to always try to understand the other person on the side of the table you're negotiating with or you're working with, understand what shoes they've walked in their industry, and learn as much as you can about different things you don't necessarily think you know about. Try to know more about those things and the different industries, the government role, the private sector role, and then your role. What is your role? You have a responsibility as an employee of a company or as just walking in again, through our claim department. The claim people who go out in the field after a disaster and save people's lives, their hope out there. And so our industry has a very, very large role to play. But again, I'd say the theme is be as educated as you can. And that's what we're trying to do at the Travelers Institute, which is to help people become aware of their environments.
Thank you. Bringing it back to the Institute, as you say, 15-year anniversary, which is amazing. And but wanted to kind of focus on what's been kind of taking most of your attention in the last 12 months. I think you mentioned some things at the top, but we'd love to take a lot deeper dive into the things that you're focused on now, and then perhaps kind of moving into what do you think next year is going to bring? What do you think we're going to be focused on in the 12 months to come?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, the macroeconomic environment, and this is a global thing, right? Not just contained to the U.S. Supply chain issues and supply chain disruption we all saw during the pandemic, and really opened our eyes to how dependent we are on other countries to provide really basic things, right? And the chips or the semiconductors and things like that. And so knowing your vulnerabilities, which is kind of the number one risk, understanding that risk and how you can mitigate that risk in your business or in your personal life. Again, I talked about cybersecurity. It's a very big issue for the industry and for every single business out there. So it cuts across all industries. And a cyber insurance product for businesses can differ greatly what they need to insure, whether they have data, whether they have hard assets. Look, in the United States, and I know around the world, a lot of for example, the electrical grid. The electrical grid is not owned by the federal government here, or it is owned by private sector businesses that cut across state lines. And the common theme of a cyber threat to those businesses could affect all of us if the electrical grid goes down, or the waterways, right? And so we're focused on the big picture issues with a specific risk management eye, if you will. So workforce risk, we talked about the employee, the whole of the employee. And look, human capital is your biggest asset in any business, right? And you want to make sure those employees are engaged. So workforce risk, cybersecurity, we talked about distracted driving a lot. This is another big risk to society. If we could just save 10% lives of the 42,000 fatalities in the United States, and that has now morphed into pedestrian deaths because of distracted driving, bicyclist death, more people are cycling to work. And so we try very hard to work on themes across our business and then draw on that deep expertise we have of our 30,000 people.
Talk about distracted driving. I just want to understand that. I understand the concept, because is that people on their phones, or is that kind of like attention spans? Where's that? And is that 42,000 deaths in the US is attributed to distracted driving alone?
No, that's the fatalities total. So obviously, driving while intoxicated is still the number one cause of fatalities in the country. I'm not putting that aside, but I'm saying the rise in distraction, mostly because of our phones. Let's face it, our phones are our biggest friend or our biggest enemy. But now we have something called telematics. Again, educate and inform. Telematics tell you how you're driving. And so are you hard braking? Are you speeding? Are you distracted and going between lanes? And so all the new technologies in our cars today, the lane avoidance, thing where it kind of buzzes if you get in someone else's lane, people are turning that off. These safety features that are new and innovative, they're turning it off because it's annoying, right? And so we have to train, we have to talk about the dangers of distracted driving, but also the safety features in our cars are there for a reason. And I do think government mandates in certain circumstances with having a mandated safety feature like hard braking, have really come a long way. And we incorporate those new safety features in our insurance products as well. So again, always innovating, thinking what's around the corner.
The driving thing fascinates me, and that's why I focus on personally. But well, I used to work in the auto insurance industry, so that's kind of it's always been a kind of a bit of a thing that I focus on. But we have these things called speed awareness courses in the UK. So if you get caught speeding, rather than get points or a fine, you can go on these speed awareness courses, and you sit there for 2 days and you get told how to drive properly, and then you go away and you don't get your points or your fine. But what's really interesting is the first conversation you have is you get around a group and everyone says, "Why do you drive fast?" And the amount of people in the group that would go, "Because I think I'm a better driver than other people," was staggering. Like everyone had this view, and it wasn't gender focused, it wasn't age focused, it went across the ranges, and I was really shocked. And I think the psychology around driving is fascinating because that's the stuff I look at. People turning telematics off, people refusing to have telematics in their car. I mean, thankfully we've all got phones now, so we're kind of always, it's funny though, I don't want to be tracked in my car, and it's like, yeah, but you're using Google Maps to get there, so
Right. Well, and also, speak up to that driver who's distracted. So if you're a passenger, if you're sitting in the back of an Uber or Lyft, ride share, you have the right to a distraction-free drive. And so speak up. And it's not a stigma or an embarrassment to say to the driver, put your phone down or stop talking on, or turn the radio off. Like I deserve and I'm paying for a distracted free drive. And so speak up even to your spouse or your partner or your kids, whoever's driving and they're distracted, and set an example for yourself, right? Because I remember back in the 70s, yes, I'm old, when seatbelts first came out, right? And I'm sitting in the back all buckled up because my second grade teacher told me to buckle up. And my dad and my mom are in the front seat not buckled up because they've never buckled up, in their 30, 40 years of their life. But speaking up to someone, calling out bad behavior, that's totally acceptable and you should do that. And I called my parents out many times. Sometimes they listened, sometimes they didn't.
Yeah, no. I did tell my Uber driver off the other day. I was telling you actually beforehand, wasn't it? I was just watching a YouTube video and I was like, can you not until we get home, and then you can do what you like. Joan, I could talk to you for ages. I did want to kind of focus on some of you've done a lot of initiatives around women in the insurance space as well. So I just wanted to give some room for that. Because I thought it was quite innovative in the way that you were approaching it. Because I'm right, one of them is like she golfs and as much as anything else. And
I could talk about this for hours. So, so first of all, the company is a long history of diversity, and our CEO says diversity is not a nice to have; it's a must have, because our population is so diverse, and we have to be more diverse in the industry. And frankly, we've not been for a lot of years, and that's not true of just insurance, it's true of banking, financial services generally. He's doubled down on it, our CEO, and he created a program about 6 years ago called She Travels. So it's a little play on travelers. She Travels, and we set out to be the industry leader for women. And so we have a lot of senior women at the company and different businesses across the way. And I was on the steering committee, and all of a sudden the pandemic hits. As I said, I'm on the road almost every day. I'm in an airplane. That's really no joke. I really am. And I was sitting at home and I looked at my husband like, what am I going to do? Like, my job is on the road. He's like, Joan, why don't you take up golf? I'm like, I don't have 4 hours to play golf. He's like, yes, you do. You have all the time in the world. So that first 2 years of the pandemic, I took a ton of golf lessons. All my family's a golf. I have 4 kids and they go off to golf vacations with my husband, and I'll work or I'll stay home and clean the house or whatever. And they're all golfing. And it dawned on me, the insurance industry is a big golfing industry as well. So I'm going to go and try this thing. I don't think I'll be good at it, but what the heck? I have all this time on my hands. I was good at it. I loved it. I became addicted to golf. That's not a joke. I played 9 holes every single day during the pandemic. I'd go out at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I went to my CEO. It's like, it just dawned on me. I am at the end of my career. Had I been playing golf for the last 20 or 30 years in the industry, because there's always a charity scramble or something, then I would always say no, because I'm not a golfer. Well, I went to him and I said, look, let's stand up a women's golf program. Well, if we build it, we'll see if they come, whatever that movie was. Well, we built a program. It's called She Golfs. And we've had almost 3,000 women go through clinics across the country. And we've rolled it out to our agent and broker partners. We have a little handbook, how to roll out a golf program for women. And I'm telling you, it is the most gratifying diversity program I've ever been a part of. And so when men started showing up at our She Golfs clinics, I knew I had something. I knew we were onto something, because young men are also intimidated by the game of golf, right? They don't even know where to begin sometimes. And a lot of us didn't grow up at country clubs. I certainly didn't. My dad was a coal miner for 42 years. I was never introduced to the game of golf. And so broadening this availability of this tool for our business, which is having more women and young men involved in a game that is so permeating our industry, I thought it was worth a try, and it is blown up. It is just blown up. We've had more than 70 clinics. Again, about 3,000 people have been through it in the last 2 years.
It's brilliant. It really resonates with me, because I was on a panel and we were talking about, I was lucky enough to host it, and a very senior figure in the broking industry. And we were talking about what can we do to address kind of gender balance in leadership. And one of the things she said was she went learn to play golf and go to the sporting events. And essentially she was saying, look, the industry shouldn't focus on these things as much as it does, but it does. And so she was like, until you get the seat at the top table, and then you can make the changes you want to change. You've got to be a part of the game. So she was like, learn to play golf, go to the rugby event, and just embrace it. And particularly golf, though, because it's such a healthy kind of, one, it's a healthy sport. Two, it's a very leveling sport. It's not like there's a huge advantage by physicality. It's kind of, there's many ways to get around a golf course, of which I usually choose, the other fairway. That's my favourite way of doing it. But my story is the same as you. Like, I'm from very humble origins. My dad never played golf. We didn't have the money to spend to play golf. So I started playing golf when I worked in the insurance industry. And but now I go away every year, and there's always 4 or 5 guys from the insurance industry there. And there's a lot of business done there. So, if anything, it's kind of the most leveling thing is not just this sort of introduction to the sport. It's a place in the conversation, isn't it, realistic?
Yeah, it's having a seat at the table, knowing the lingo, the language, the jargon of, and I have to say this, and this may be cringeworthy to some people, but I feel people treat me differently. Some men treat me differently, with a different level of respect now that I'm a golfer. And then, of course, then we go play golf, and they're like, oh, God, her drive, she just outdrove me? Oh, my gosh, what's going on? Like, the world is turned upside down, that some woman would have beat him on that hole. And I laugh now, and it's fine. But it's true that unless you see one of the guys said to me, like, Joan, wow, like, your level of respect just went up for you. I'm like, because I golf? Like, are you real? Is that for real? But it is real. And I think just, again, being in the game, and whether it's tennis or whether it's going skiing or whatever, I think, sports to men is a really big thing and part of a lot of men's lives. And because women are having kids, or I say this, I might get in trouble, and I never thought spending 4 hours on a Saturday was worth my time. I just didn't. It wasn't a priority for me. But I also think it's self-care and taking care of yourself. And if you're healthy and mentally, fit, you can help your family. You can be better moms, better dads if you take care of yourself. And so my self-care these days is getting on the course, and I'll be out there in a few hours, by the way, and playing. Even if you get in 9, it's fine.
Yeah. I must admit, I'm yet to be convinced. I'm still not a massive golf fan, so I'm yet to be convinced 4 hours is worth it. But I love it. I love a 9. 2 hours is good. I could do that.
We call it 9 and wine, or 9 and dine.
I love that. Joan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. I think we could have talked for hours, but I'll kind of leave it there. So thank you very much for being a guest on Leadership and Insurance podcast.
Alex, thanks so much for having me, and love to have you on our podcast and our webinars as well. Let's do it.
I'll be there anytime you want the invite.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.